Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Friday for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. All right, guys, I hope you're all having a wonderful week, having a great Friday here. Welcome back, Eric and Matt here. And we are getting into another episode, a weekly episode of Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit. This is our podcast. In case you guys don't know, some of you are probably following on YouTube. If you're watching, hello, and thanks for joining back in. And some of you are probably following here on podcasts, but those are the two places that you can definitely catch these episodes. We go into a lot of different subjects and, not always necessarily just firearms related, although I do like to discuss firearms and Second Amendment rights quite a bit, and I'm sure there will be some talk of that, of course, in today's podcast. But, we do get into some really fun subjects. And, today's not a fun subject, but I guess it depends on which way you look at it. But before we get too far in today's episode, I'd like to give a thanks to the show's patron sponsor, WeTheProcessor.com. They are a staunchly pro-freedom and pro-2A card processor. No monthly fees, low rates. You don't ever have to worry about being terminated or canceled by your current processor for what you sell. Check them out at WeTheProcessor.com. We're going to go and talk a little bit today about the whole woke mentality and, sort of the social consequences, the economical consequences, the consequences on our overall sanity.
Yeah.
Right? And sort of go over what that means and what it's resulting in. It is currently in the news. People are talking about some things that are going on, oddly enough, right here in Georgia, where this podcast is being filmed and recorded. So let's kind of break into it a bit. I mean, what is this? It has the lingering appearance of a counterculture movement in a way, but really it's counterculture in sort of the wrong way, not in the not in the punk rock, screw the man type of a vein, but more in the dystopian sort of vein where we're sort of going in the wrong direction. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I just wanted to touch on when you said we don't always talk about firearms, but being gun guys, it's woven into the fabric of our being. So every episode, there probably more than likely will be something about firearms just because it's in our nature. But I mean, when you start looking at, what's going on with society, the whole woke culture, really, you could see it kind of budding in the, I would say, mid 2000s. You started to see you started to hear the word woke. And at that time, I didn't personally really know what it was. And then as it, kind of grew and grew and grew, it did manifest and turn into an actual culture, an ideology almost. And you start to see a lot of businesses and corporate structures get on board, a lot of political figures kind of getting into it. And it took on a life of its own. And with any ideology, you're going to see, different aspects of it. So whether it's, different, I will use a religion as an example. There's a lot of, religious ideological factions that all fall under one umbrella. And you're actually starting to see that now with the woke culture. You'll see some that are way more, quote, woke than others. And then you have some people that are, just mildly woke. And then you have guys like me that kind of look back and say, this is weird. So
Webster's dictionary defines woke. Essentially, woke is increasingly used as a byword for social awareness. So on the surface of what we say woke is and why people use that vernacular, the underlying idea of whatever the wokeness may not necessarily be a negative thing, right? So, for instance, let's say that you were on the fence about gun rights. Okay, we'll talk about the Second Amendment, but let's say that you were on the fence about gun rights, and then somebody wound up convincing you that, you should support gun rights a little bit more, and that maybe you should buy a gun and be a little bit more politically active about people that are trying to take your rights away. Well, yeah, you're woke because you are awakened to the social and economic and political circumstances that surround a given decision or leaning in a certain direction. And it's okay to be positively woke, right? If you're having a bad dream, it doesn't mean you dream forever. Eventually you wake up and you realize it was a dream. So it's okay to be in a nightmare and wake up. And that's not the kind of woke we're talking about. Woke becomes sort of an axiom of the counterculture itself when we look at it in terms of how it's being used now, because they think that they are being awakened to some, crazy idea that maybe, society as a whole has, fell by the wayside of in recent years, and that they are bringing people to the light and seeing the world from a perspective that it previously could not see it from. They think that that's what they're doing, but in reality, it's just cringe, you know what I mean? And it's created an entire meme culture completely around itself about this woke society as being an extremely negative thing, because people are just pandering, and the idea is that they're trying to cater to one specific race or group of people or ethnic background or a certain, person that might be of a certain wealth or status in society. And they're trying to pander to those people, but it's not genuine. It's not real. That's what comes into play with this whole thing too. The idea of the negative connotation of what woke is now would be more of people are making fun of those companies who obviously aren't really about what they say that they're about, and they're just lying to try to grow in the business realm or to keep their customers, what they think is keeping their customers happy or everything like that. So it's not really the same thing. It's disingenuous, right, is what the new woke is, I think, is the way to look at it.
And I think one of the most recent examples of political wokeness is what the MLB did. So moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta. So we had the MLB All-Star game scheduled to go here, and then we had a controversial, someone called it a controversial ruling on Georgia voting laws about just having to show your ID and stuff like that. And then the MLB said, well, we don't agree with these oppressive voter laws that you have. We're moving our MLB All-Star game to Colorado. Interestingly enough, Colorado is more restrictive and oppressive on voter laws than Georgia, if you want to go that route. So it's just really interesting to see that, a company or organization will get so high up on the soapbox that they're willing to do something just to do it, to gain favor with, I guess, the socioeconomic populace. But those same people that they're trying to garner attention from are not even the core customer of the people that would pay for the tickets to go to the game. Right. So they're literally pandering to a group of people that they make no money from.
Well, and I think that a lot of it too is they're pandering to a group of people that not only aren't even part of their customer base, but then the other way to kind of consider this too is because the culture of woke mentality and the culture of cancel culture, which we've done an entire podcast where we talk about examples of cancel culture throughout our society. But they want to cancel others for their political views, but they don't want to be subject to the cancelization. They don't want to get canceled themselves. So they think the only way they can do it is to politically pander and publicly pander to the people that they think are the most likely going, to cancel them as a result of not showing support for a given thing. And that's why it's so disingenuous when you look at woke culture as it comes into play now and the way we look at it. It's disingenuous because they care more about not being subject to the beast that they've created than they do actually doing the right thing and running their company in a way that is in line with their personal principles and not the pressure of society. I mean, we saw it last year with all the black squares and everything, and people posting it not even really caring what it would overall be about from a holistic point anyway, right? You know what I mean? And this whole liberal woke mentality, when you look at that concept, these liberals telling you, oh, you're being oppressed, this person hates you. And it's like to think that a group of people within our culture is dumb and can't think for themselves and don't know what's good for them and their families and communities, right? So thinking that people are too dumb to, understand the world around them, they have to be told. Right.
Well, no, I 100% agree. Okay, so here's an example. If a 78-year-old white man said to anybody that we think that you are too stupid to figure out how to get a driver's license or an ID, something that you need to do daily things like deposit a check or buy stuff, anything over the age of 18 you have to show an ID for, is disingenuous at best. And that is the ultimate form of racism, to say that you believe that somebody is too stupid to do something for themselves.
You actually wind up projecting how much you hate the world around you a lot more when you get on board with those types of things. And that's what's so counterintuitive about those concepts. The concepts of the woke culture, the overall intentions, or at least the appearance of the intentions being there, get lost on the cringe of the whole thing. They don't realize the hypocritical way that they're approaching these types of issues. Oh, well, having to show an ID to vote is racist. Well, why would you say it's racist? I mean, wouldn't you say, oh, it's logistically difficult for certain people to vote because of X, Y, Z, whatever reason? List the reason. List the real reason, right? But why is it just racist? Like, that's so narrow-minded. Like, that's such a level that so many people just aren't operating under, right? People don't get up and use racism as, let's just say, a way that they approach their given day, right? They're not going to get in their vehicle and ride down the road and go run an errand or something and go, okay, well, how can I be racist today? Like, people just don't think that way. We're not wired that way. So, because that's such a pigeonholed and terrible way to assume that that's how people look at the world, is only under the lens of racism. Listen to what you're saying. Voter ID is racist. What? That's the best you got? That's the lowest hanging fruit that you've got? Come on, give me a break. But then you've got these people who are saying, oh, well, voter ID is racist. Well, okay, if we've identified that, no, it's not racist, let's look at it from a logistical standpoint, right? How many things do you have to do on a day-to-day basis as an average American that involve using an ID?
Everything.
You can't book a hotel. You can't buy alcohol, cigarettes. You can't buy firearms. You can't drive it. Well, you shouldn't drive a vehicle unless you have a license, I suppose.
You can't buy Benadryl at the grocery store because it has some drug in it that people use. So then they card you to buy Benadryl.
You can't board an airplane. You can't enter a theme park without a license.
You can't pick up your MLB tickets from the ticket booth without your driver's license or ID.
Yeah, in Delta's case, Delta has some of the strictest ID requirements. We're talking about Delta Airlines. They have some of the strictest ID requirements for boarding their planes. But yet the CEO of Delta here in Georgia-based company, Georgia is the home of Delta. Anyhow, you've got the governor going back and forth with the CEO of Delta over these voter, law, this square off that they have, so to speak. And they're going after each other's throats about it. But how can you, as a CEO of a company who requires ID for a myriad of different things within your organization, think about it. All right, your employees that work for you, if you work for Delta, you got to show your ID to get in the building. You carry around an ID around your neck with your picture on it, like a company ID. Your company issues ID to keep up with your with your contractors and for your workers and for access and entry. So you're going to control access tightly to the airport and make your employees have a special tag, essentially, okay? And you're going to require the civilians to show very strict and concise forms of ID to even board your plane. But yet, when Georgia wants to just have a law that says, one vote, one ID, one person, one vote per person, and like, hey, if you can submit your, ballot, through the mail or whatever. You can do a mail-in ballot, but it's going to have to be verified against ID within a certain amount of time, and it has to be forensically audited to make sure you are who you say you are, and that your vote counts, and that you don't go and vote more than one time, or that dead people don't vote. I mean, come on.
But Eric, they're talking about the person that lives way out into the woods that has no way of getting to a place where they can get internet or get to a place to get an ID. But you and I have both been to places that are way out in the woods. And these people, the first thing they pulled out was a smartphone. I'm talking about 70 to 80 miles from civilization. Mm-hmm. And they all had smartphones. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Not to say it's not impractical or improbable that happen, but I think it's a very, very small amount of America that happens to.
I also think that it's very disingenuous for a group of people to go, oh, well, the reason that this is bad is because not everybody might be able to get ID or afford ID. And I think I don't think you really believe that, right? Like, even if you are the person that poses that question, you're claiming to be woke, XYZ, whatever, right? I don't even think that person truly believes that what they're saying is true. Everybody has freaking ID because everybody's got a random smartphone. I mean, in this society, the exchange of information is so readily available and relevant, and people can always, stay up to date with each other on social media and things like that. So I think that if there were some giant plan for that to be so, or even if that was the intended purpose of the law, which it's not, but let's say it was, evolving from some systemic racism or whatever that they claim that it is. Don't you really think that if that was the true meaning of it, that someone within the organization would spill the beans on that and say something about it, or there'd be some video leak or document leak or some external email that someone got a hold of or a text message or something like that, right? So you look at, like, when you have the inkling of an idea that this fraud or this kind of crazy internal thing might be going on within, let's just say, a company or an organization, you have that feeling in the back of your head, and then maybe nothing ever comes of it. But think about how many times it does versus situations where the woke left goes, oh, we have to cancel this person because XYZ, or, oh, Delta and the governor are going back and forth over this racist voter ID law. Okay, well, where are the internal conversations? Like, where are the whistleblowers within that situation saying, hey, we know it's racist and here's why, versus, okay, the amount of people on the other side of the spectrum that you end up seeing all of these random interviews and all kind of crazy, terrible things pop up about these people. Hunter Biden and the crack pipe, and you've got Jeffrey Epstein and all the evidence. You just, not to get down that rabbit hole, but you see, like, the stuff that backs up what you at least think about that person. And it's always the people that are on that side that are trying to politicize something as simple as a voter ID law.
They're projecting what they are.
Precisely.
But they're projecting what they truly are in the guise of what they're not. So, I mean, and this just reminded me of, back when, Obama was president, I used to be in telecommunications. They had a huge push from every single major carrier, where they would have subsidized phones, 100% free smartphones. And these were companies that were contracted. They were given these allotments of phones from the government, and their job literally was to sit on the most busiest corner and go door to door and sign people up, because that carrier got money from the government in excess of what it cost them. So you would get 100 minutes a month for free. You'd get a phone for free, and you get 100 minutes a month, and you'd get like a certain amount of data to that phone for free. You had to meet a certain economic level, which the people that he's pandering to at this point would fall well within that economic scale. So they get a certain amount of minutes. And if you wanted to upgrade, it's $10 a month. And $10 a month at that level, economic level, will get you unlimited everything.
Not to mention buy an ID. I mean,
to say that people don't have access to the same things, there's programs that were subsidizing everything. Home internet was $10. What it cost the normal, economic mid-level person about $80 a month, they would get for 10.
So greatly subsidized,
hugely,
by the American taxpayers.
But the government is still paying these cable companies and telecommunication companies full bill on it. They're just subsidizing it. So, yeah, to put it in perspective, there's lots of programs that were in place to help combat this. And yet, if they put these programs in place, why are they now saying, are they admitting that they didn't work?
I think overall they are naive enough to think that we are stupid.
Stupid.
And that's the thing. They think that we're dumb and that we don't see what is going on in that giant scheme of things, right? So it's pretty weird, to look at it under that lens, where, you got the Obama phones and everything like that. So there's a lot of that wokeism that goes into this.
Well, when you start talking about woke, you have those different offshoots, and cancel culture we talked about, it has now woven its way into woke culture. And then you have the racism aspect that weaved itself in. So now when you think of woke, it's synonymous with just things like this outrage culture now that you see, where it's almost like you're outraged just to be outraged. So somebody says something and they're like, I disagree with that, and this is why. And it pays to be outraged at anything and try to start a movement and try to cancel something or somebody or a company. So much so now that you see these huge corporations bending their will and bending their knees because, like you said, they don't want to be canceled. They're worried about it. And the fact that they don't have a spine to stand up to it says a lot. That means that they don't believe in the community that does believe in them enough to help them. So imagine having, like, I'm going to use, say, like a firearms company. They bend their will to the woke culture or a woke organization because they don't believe that their customers and the people that believe in their company will go to bat for them. And it's sad because it is somewhat true. I mean, there's a lot of people that will sit on their hands in the time of need, and there's a small percentage of people that will go to bat for them.
I wouldn't say that it's that they don't have the courage to stand up for their beliefs, but I think that the way that this whole thing is shaken down is these companies are not dumb. They realize that population densities and demographics are going to play heavily into what their customer base will be years from now. So maybe they are looking at the writing on the wall and they're going, hey, things might be a little slow right now, but in the long run, these people we're pandering to will eventually understand that we supported them, or that whatever, that we were a part of that cultural movement at the time or something. And then they'll remember that and they'll do business with us instead of someone else. So just this last weekend, it was this past Saturday. I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but so what's today? Like the 15th?
Something like
anyway,
that, yeah.
Just this last Saturday, there was actually a big meeting. Sort of a Skype meeting, telephone conference meeting, if you will. And it was 100 leaders from various Fortune 500 companies, large companies. And there was this mafia-style phone call that they made. And they were talking about this whole woke thing. And the issue that they're having is that woke equals broke. Because what's actually happening are the large, area of society that thinks that what you're doing is very cringeworthy, and they go, you know what, I'm going to cancel this company because I think this woke, bullcrap is just trash, and I don't want to, disturb my overall thought process with trying to think about something so, silly to them. They don't agree with it or whatever. Well, the problem is woke equals broke, so they actually wind up having a lot of people that won't do business with their company. So what this meeting was about, they're like, all right, well, how do we support the progressive left, and how do we also appear woke, but how do we eliminate the broke portion? So they know that the conservatives do business with their company, and that are, totally, a necessary component of success. And the issue is they promote this globalist leftist progressivism or progressiveness with how they look at their policies. But they still very much are capitalists, and they want to make money, and they totally have become millionaires through capitalism. But yet they want to have the appearance of being against capitalism and more globalist and progressive, extreme leftist and Marxist, but still have the benefits of being a capitalist and selling a product and having margins and profits and things, and very much the American dream that capitalism provides. So that's very telling when you've got this group of people that, well, how do we look like socialists but operate like capitalists? And how do we come out of this thing actually being able to operate like capitalists but support Marxism in the same swing?
Well, you do that by doing exactly what we just said, is you project what you are and not what you want to be, or
what you're really doing.
Or what you're really doing, yeah. So I mean, when you look at all the companies like Coca-Cola, Be Less White, these are the same woke companies that are lobbying against tariffs from China because they source a ton of their materials from China, and if any of that legislation goes through, then their cost is going to go up, which means they're going to get less profit. So they're for doing business with a country that oppresses their people, but yet they also are against anything in America, and they're left-leaning. So they're kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth. So when you see they're projecting like, no, we're woke. But at the same time, they're like, hey, let's keep doing business with China because it's profit margins, right? Yeah. We got to make more money.
Yeah, or you get into some situation where, let's say, I'm not going to mention specifically by name anyone, but you look at people within the, let's just say the musician community, the acting community. You look at Hollywood, radio personalities, whatever, right? Whatever a person's status might be, but especially, you look at a musician that, gets paid to sing and entertain people, but somehow wants to get on the political bandwagon all the time and appear woke, right? And you look at, I'm not going to mention who she is, but you write a song about an extremely wet cat. Okay, and when your daughter walks in the room, you got to turn it off because that's not appropriate for your own daughter to hear. But yet, you'll corrupt the minds of all the other children in the country as long as your profit margin's nice and high. But when it comes to your own, even your own product you're pushing is not good enough for your own kid because you know how much filth it is.
That's right.
So, but they're woke though. They're woke. So, and that's the cringe part of it. Like, you say one thing and you say you support one thing, but really your actual policies are very much quite different than what you think you're preaching. And that's why the perception of woke culture now is an extremely negative thing with a lot of people, because of the amount of people that are willing to just say, we're woke, but really in principle and in acting and in their day-to-day business, it's just status quo. Hey, what's the profit margin? What are we doing? What are we selling? Like, it's all about the capitalism that surrounds the situation, and the whole cultural part of it is only a secondary consequence of just being a large company, I think, more than them actually caring about what they're peddling.
Right. And then,
in terms of their wokeness.
So that's like a woke projection for a company. Now, if we drill down and we do a woke projection on individuals, people, you have guys like Bernie Sanders. He's like, equity and equitable outcomes for everybody. Yet he's the same guy. He's a millionaire now. He wasn't when he started, but he's a millionaire now. He made the money. And funny story, he, in the 60s, he went to like this hippie farm, like a work farm where everybody kind of pitches in and helps out. He got kicked out because he wouldn't work as hard as everybody else, but he still wanted to eat the same food. He wanted to party and do all the same stuff. He didn't want to do his fair share. Interesting how that works. He's literally projecting what he believes in, but not what he is.
Projecting what he believes in and what he couldn't even apply an actual physical principle and actually show and expand on as a person in his everyday life, a concept that failed for him because of his laziness, but yet he wants that for everybody. But when someone like that wants this free-for-all, right, like you picture this communion of hippies all growing food and building tents or whatever they do.
We'll go with food.
Whatever.
Food.
Okay, whatever they do. Well, but when you look at that, that's such a utopian concept that sure, it would probably work out if every single person was completely selfless to the situation. But when this person who couldn't even exist within the situation himself, do you think for 1 second he really wants that? No, he wants the style of it that he was involved in, which is like, y'all do all the work and I'll sit back and I'll still take my share or more just because. So there really are projecting when you sort of microanalyze what these people are talking about and the type of concepts they support, yet compared to the way they live and their amount of wealth, you quickly know that it's really just them projecting that negativity, that their particular role or their desired role within the environment is not the same thing they want for you. You're going to be the worker ant and they're going to be the overlord, and that's all they care about. They know that they will be the overlord in the situation. So of course they want to promote it because someone's got to do the work and pay their fair share while, you sit back and take advantage of it.
Yep. Now, fast forward to I think this broke a couple of days ago. The BLM co-founder, Patrice Khan-Cullors, co-founder of BLM, openly Marxist organization.
Trained Marxist.
Bought 4 properties, over $2 million worth, one house being $1.4 million. So interesting.
That we know about.
Yeah, that we know about. Interesting how one calls for equity and equal rights for all, but everybody doesn't have $1 million houses.
Right.
And yeah.
And they don't care. They're okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, you think about all the folks that you say you're trying to help, right? I'm not going to say that the overlying, reason that someone started that type of movement wasn't probably at least founded in some sanity and good intentions, right? I'd be crazy to say that the intentions aren't good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
The thing is I find it very hard to believe that someone like that would be able to garner, so much support, and that their, members and people that have supported them financially over the years wouldn't call them out on it. All that money that you spent on those houses, you could have bought a giant piece of land and like relocated people that were in really terrible situations. You could have done like a Habitat for Humanity type of thing and build some very affordable homes on a large piece of property that you subsidized and, get people off the streets and put them, or, go to these neighborhoods that have, rough situations and rough situations at home for the kids and build a rec center and subsidize it. Like, you pay for the rec center, you subsidize the electricity, you subsidize the staff that is going to, deal with it. And then, the community can put in donations and things to help support those programs and keep the lights on and keep them in operation. And, boys and girls programs and things like that, and community outreach. Even if it's just after school programs, it could be, there are so many things they could put that money into that would actually do a benefit for the inner city communities. But the thing is, it's not even just inner city. We're forced and pigeonholed to think of this situation as a white and black issue, and that, all right, well, inner cities, I'm automatically going to assume that we're talking about, poor black families, people that would probably generally be associated with the BLM movement, probably on the lower end of the economic spectrum, and obviously most of them are going to be the black communities. But I think that it's unfair because there are plenty of folks in the inner cities that are all races, from all different backgrounds, from all different socioeconomic, whatever their upbringing might have been, different religions, different ethnic groups. You name it. The inner cities is a very diverse group of people. So it's not just, that community of people, right? That's a way that they'd be able to reach across the aisle and say, hey, we're building this rec center, and here it is from this organization of people, and we're going to subsidize it. We're going to take donations and keep it running. And hey, yeah, here's an after-school program. If you're an inner city kid who, has got a rough home environment and you don't want to go home after school, you can come here and we'll have teachers in here that'll teach you extracurricular stuff, right? Or here's a history class, or here's, a rec center, boys and girls program, something like that they could do after school curricular activities to keep these young people from getting in trouble. And they go out and they get slinging dope and doing, bad stuff and committing crimes, and they turn to a world of crime as a result. So keeping those kids off the street could certainly be where those funds could be allocated, rather than buying a person who it claims to be a classically trained Marxist for mansions. I don't think that's really setting forth a good example, not only of your political beliefs, but the appearance of what a nonprofit type of organization should be trying to accomplish. If you're a charity, you should do charitable things with the money instead of buying yourself mansions. I think that's just the hypocrisy.
Well, the Atlanta chapter of BLM, actually the leader got put in jail for fraud as well. I believe it was to the tune of close to $500,000. I think it was like he bought houses and cars and stuff like that. But if you look that up, that's what happened to the Atlanta chapter of BLM. But it's just really interesting to see that an organization that kind of shot up overnight came, and I know that episode isn't about BLM specifically, but they are synonymous with woke culture currently in this climate. But to see that organization grow so fast, I honestly haven't seen or heard of any offshoot programs that are helping the local communities. And I could be wrong, but I have looked. I haven't seen any actual organizations like after school programs. I mean, you would think if you have that much money as an organization, you can create some programs in some of the heavier or denser areas to help kind of combat this. But I haven't seen anything. So it's just really weird to see that organization spend money on houses and stuff, but not on actually helping people.
On the people that they claim to be helping. Well, and there's another thing, like within the last 5 or 6 years especially, we've gotten into the age of grifting, right?
Yeah.
So I think that they are a pristine example of what grifting is, right? This pandering of a certain group of people. Oh, we're doing something. We're fighting these people. We're fighting those people, and we need your support. We need, and we see that. Okay, to be fair, we see this type of fundraising done on various different types of environments, right? When we look at groups like the NRA or the GOA or the FPC or any of these pro-gun groups, right? Pro-gun groups, FPC will absolutely ask you for money. They will accept donations. They will try to say the sky's falling, to their credit. Okay.
They have a track record of success, though.
They do. Now, I support FPC. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing to say, hey, when something's going on, let's rally the troops and let's get the support in to take care of the issue. All right. Those aren't the same things. Whereby BLM pandering for money is just grifting. It's not grifting when, all right, FPC takes a whole ton of money in, and guys like I promote them, I support them, I donate, I share their links, I try to get people involved. So I support them, guys. Don't think I don't, because I do. But it's one thing to grift and try to get the money in the door, and then you got this lawsuit machine going brrr and running out, and they are suing people left and right, and they are actually putting their money where their mouth is. I mean, right now, the FPC is engaged in over 20 lawsuits, and all of those lawsuits cost money. Lots of money. They are putting their money where their mouth is. Yeah, they collect money, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in money, but then they turn around and they put that money back into the causes that they're fighting for, and they defend your rights. So it's not grifting at that point. Grifting, all right, this is the Urban Dictionary.
Let's hear it.
All right, Urban Dictionary, money made dishonestly, as in a swindle, gamble, or confidence game. So again, they're running a good game. They're talking it up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Oh, we should fight these evil racists and things, these white supremacists they keep saying. That's their hot term, right? That's the evil name they want to come up with to describe anyone that's not them, right? So they pigeonhole this entire culture of people into believing that someone hates them because of the color of their skin or something like that. Think about how terrible that is. And then think about the grifting, the confidence that someone has to get up there and say, yeah, we're going to do this, and then collect millions of dollars from these people.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions.
Enormous amounts
and then
of money.
Disappropriate those funds. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that every single tiny fund goes to 100% fraud. I mean, I'm sure to stay on the up and up, there's got to be something they're doing, and I'm not saying that it's bad to approach those sort of things. I don't agree with Marxism. And I don't believe with the sort of cringe message.
Apparently, the BLM co-founder doesn't believe in Marxism either.
Apparently not. And I believe that is that pretty much gets this topic kind of a topper put on that, right? Someone who claims to be a trained Marxist but doesn't believe in the true principles of Marxism. And certainly a true Marxist would definitely not be a capitalist.
That's right.
Wouldn't buy things, would have a collective ownership type of attitude more so than, a true Marxist would not believe that any one person has the right to obtain all that wealth.
Or they would put the organization down as the owner of the house, not themselves.
Right.
So it belongs to the people.
So some other things that we get into with this modern wokeism and everything, and I think we've really covered most of the examples of what we've seen in it, especially in this year from January 2021 till now, which has only been 3 or 4 months now. But I think you can certainly see where it's gone recently.
That, and I just wanted to touch on, so wokeism is a very well-known thing, but with what's going on with COVID, the isolation that people are going through, it's like this was a hot pot of like the ability to engage with people again, because you had a lot of people that were just at home or just isolating or quarantining and not going out as much. So like, whereas you usually go out every day, every day of my life I leave the house. So there was a point in time where there's people that just stayed home for weeks at a time, had groceries delivered and stuff like that. But when they see something woke or something they didn't agree with, and then they saw other people disagree with that, that's that camaraderie or that engagement they're looking for. So you start to see this influx of disagreement, of cancel culture. That's why it just seemed like you would see a snowball come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, somebody says something and everybody's at home like, yeah, that's wrong. And then everybody kind of can agree to disagree on that, and that gives you that dopamine hit of like, I'm not alone, I'm with other people.
That's right.
So that's kind of my take on what happened.
So I believe the saying, and I may get this wrong. I usually get things pretty wrong. Y'all shouldn't listen to anything I say.
Only 50% of the time.
At least I'll admit it. But well, anyway, I believe the saying is that idle hands build the devil's playground.
Close enough.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close.
Or idle hands are the devil's playground. But I prefer to make a slight amendment to the saying and say that they build a devil's playground, because I think that's a little more poetic.
It could be true as well.
I would say maybe a slightly bit more poetic, and I tend to be kind of a sappy guy in that regard. Anyway, so when we look at these ideas, idle minds also forge the worst ideas sometimes. All right. Now, Sir Isaac Newton sat below the apple tree, and it was hit in the head with an apple and started to think about gravity, right? So sometimes the universe does prod us in that way at moments when we will least suspect it. But I'm not going to compare this to the genius of Sir Isaac Newton or Galileo or any of those Renaissance people. I would say more terrible ideas also are bred from isolation, right? When you take society and you pin them down in such a way, you have to think human beings, our culture in general, no matter where you go in the world, no matter who you are, it could even be people that hate each other, even in impasse. There are those moments where we are very social people. Human beings are social animals, and they require community, and they require something to belong to. And like Matt said, when these ideas start to fester and take root, you can have a breeding ground for very terrible ideas to take hold, and for people to start believing, you know what, I'm starting to believe that this could be the way I think. I'm changing my mind about this, right? I think we've seen a little bit of both. We've seen groups of people that have turned more to Marxist ideas and to socialistic and communistic type ideas, more so in the last few years and probably a long time in our country. There was sort of, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was this environment where it seemed, okay, well, the people that are on the way, way, way far left, they do sound a little crazy. Even people on the left would say that, oh, well, I'm left, but I don't support that far left. Like, that's way over in left field. I'm not sure, I can completely agree with that, right? Now you're seeing they're not really trying to hide it that much now.
Yeah, it's true.
It's out there in the forefront of your society. It's out there in Hollywood, in music. It's out there in the counterculture that surrounds, you're starting to see transgender models and things like that. So I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of, the transgender thing or sexuality, because I don't want to go that route on this particular podcast. But I'll just say that there are two sides of the equation for me personally. Okay, briefly. I guess we are going to talk about it, so we will. Screw it.
Yeah,
so
talk about
for me, there's a couple of ways to look at it. Like on one end, I value freedom more than I value any other of the associating factors that people tend to associate themselves and distance themselves from others based on, right? Okay, well, I'm a transgender athlete or something, so I'm only going to be within the community of those people because I think they're the only people that support me, and that's my identifying feature. Or, oh, I'm a black or white person, so therefore I'm going to get up today, look in the mirror, and I'm going to live my life based on that one tiny factor, and then that's the thing that defines me, and that's going to be the chip I wear on my shoulder today. No. The way I look at life is much more holistically, right? To me, the thing that I tend to flock to is freedom, liberty, human rights, personal freedom. To me is the important thing. And I not only demand that of myself and want that for myself, I want it for everybody else too. So I can't rightly be in the field of, hey, valuing freedom is my determining aspect of how I live my life, and then rightly and non-hypocritically look at someone and say, well, I think it's really weird that you think that way about sexuality or about this or that. I can't rightly want that person to not live the life they want to live, and in the same breath go, well, I value personal freedom. So basically, that was a really fancy way of me saying I'm not a freaking hypocrite. So look, if you support that and that's your thing and you want to live that way, you do you. I've got no problem with it. Where I will possibly kind of draw the line is that society has painted a very negative idea of accepting people's culture, though. All right, in years past, it would have been as simple as me just going, hey, you do you. I may not agree with it. I may not, that might not be my lifestyle, but you do you, and it's cool, right? But then now it's not good enough that you simply accept their culture or their movement or what they're trying to do. If you don't participate, oh, you're just as complicit as the people that are against me. And that is the situation that this wokeism lives under, is that tree.
It's so true. It's so true. It started off as just, hey, just accept being around me or accept me for who I am. And then it turned into, like you said, well, you don't want to date me? Well, no, I don't have a problem with you being transgendered, but I'm not going to date you because that's just not me. And it's, well, that's, some
right.
type of...
Yeah, coming up with new terms to describe someone's straightness or gayness or their position, or, oh, someone has to have their own special pronoun. They have to have their own special title, or, oh, you can't refer to me based on he or she. You have to use, whatever pronoun, my gender pronoun.
Yeah. It's like forcing you to, to conform to something that, you don't believe in or you don't want to participate. It's like a forced participation, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, and if you refuse to participate, you're canceled, and that's where the cancel culture and the woke mentality tend to kind of come together in light of that, right? So,
or you're a phobic of some type, like
because you don't support it, you're a phobic.
Yeah, but whatever it may be, phobic. Like, no, man, that's just me. I was going to touch on the fact that Atlanta, you wouldn't think that Atlanta, it is a large city, but I would say it's getting woke faster at a faster rate than you would imagine, or that a lot of other states couldn't see coming. And I'll attribute that to Atlanta being like the Hollywood of the South. So within the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, more and more filming has been taking place here. It started off doing like smaller TV shows like Netflix series, Amazon Prime series, stuff like that. There were some really great tax incentives to film here in Georgia. And as that progressed, as those incentives went up, more and more production studios started to come to Atlanta. So we have a tremendous amount of production that happens here in Georgia and Atlanta. And with that came, expats from the West Coast. So all of those production managers, the production teams, typically that you find in LA, in California, are now moving to Georgia because that's where their movie is being shot. That's where their series is being shot. They're long-term people that live here. And now and that's kind of infusing with the culture. Atlanta or Georgia was typically a very, very staunchly red state. It was like unequivocally red, no doubt about it. And now it's, half red, half blue. You might have a red governor, a blue mayor, and that has to do with those expats coming in and kind of weaving into the fabric of Georgia, which, it's going to happen. States evolve and, things grow. But now when you see, because of those voting laws passed, a lot of movies are pulling out. So you see a lot of like, oh, this movie, we canceled the movie. We're not gonna film it because of these voting laws. Like, I think it was at least 5 different movies that have already canceled because of that. Which is, in my opinion, that is exactly the result that they were looking for, because I think that they saw that influx too, and the fact that those movies are pulling out, production studios are pulling out, I think is exactly what they wanted. Like, that's the conspiracy theory in me, because the jobs that are being lost aren't Georgia jobs; they're LA expat jobs. That
Right.
when that production gets canceled, they leave.
Well, I was going to make mention, I think that's a very astute observation, that, when these movie studios pull out, if they actually do care about jobs that Georgians have, now I'm sure some Georgians are employed. Right? It would go without saying, yes, there's cameramen, there's sound men, and, site design. I mean, there's plenty of people from the local Georgia economy that
we do a lot of work
employ.
for movies, not on the Ballistic Ink side, but we do movie prop sets for garments and stuff, and we've done it for quite a few movies.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it does help the local economy.
Right.
But
when you look at the MLB playoffs or whatever getting moved to Yuppieville, all right, white liberal Yuppieville. So wait a minute. So you're going to take $100 million in revenue and move it to another state instead of no telling how many black businesses there in the greater Atlanta area that would probably benefit from all different types of business ventures that ball game would bring to town. $100 million in revenue that could have been in Georgians' hands, and instead they exported it to another state. All right, then you look at the movie studios going, all right, well, we're going to pull production and move these 5 films back to somewhere else. And they'll even pay more money and not even care because to them it's just all about the fake social justice warrior crap.
Wokeness.
And then taking money out of the hands of Georgians that they were plenty happy to do business with and make money with together and employ. And then you're telling them, well, your state's a bunch of racists, this or that, and you're racist, so we're going to pull out. And, oh, well, thanks for the work, but we'll see you later. It just seems a little disingenuous, seems dishonest, it seems shady, and it just doesn't seem like what good people would do, like in good business practice, to take care of each other. And another thing that I'll sort of mention about that, I think I wouldn't call it a conspiracy theory at all. I think you could be right. Maybe deep down inside, some of those Georgia legislatures, they don't give a crap that they're leaving, because they were just giving them a bunch of tax subsidies anyway.
That's right.
That we were subsidizing a lot of things that were going on. And sure, the giant socio-economical ramifications of those things are that, Georgians are being employed. They're bringing money into the Georgia system. These towns are making money. The local economy's making money. So, we can subsidize that to bring that type of business to Georgia. Okay, I get it. I understand why they would do that. But when we look at population densities and population demographics and how those people voted, not to say that Hollywood coming to Georgia is the only reason that it turned blue in the last elections, but that could be a contributing factor. I mean, those people, more times than not, they do bring their politics with them. They export their terrible ideas. They hate where they're living and they want to get away from it, but yet they bring those ideas where they're going to. Well, how do you expect to grow from what you came from and become, a part of a better society that is more in line with the way you think if you bring those terrible ideas with you and vote in the people that foster and support those terrible ideas?
Well, Texas is in trouble as well. So Georgia is experiencing just a portion of what Texas is going through right now. So, I mean, to put this in perspective, Texas is our Canada. So we spoke about that previously. What we see happening in Texas, because so many people are leaving California for Texas, they're getting that exponential growth of left-leaning Democratic, both citizens and politicians. Georgia is kind of on that same path. You see a lot of people leaving California, or even I'm going to say the West Coast in general, for Georgia as well. So I'd like to think that they did that on purpose, just to see, just to get some of that pushback, and hopefully some of the larger companies that are moving out. Now, you mentioned Delta. Yeah, a lot of people, and this is the way that my brain thinks, it would suck if Delta left Atlanta. That's a lot of jobs.
Oh yeah.
However, if you look at the big picture, Delta takes the entire north terminal of Hartsfield Jackson I mean, it's like 50 gates. They own the entire North Terminal. That's their hub. Do you know how much new business would come in if you had an entire terminal available? Because we're full. There's no more places for companies to come in. If you add 50 gates to the world's busiest airport, Hartsfield-Jackson is the world's busiest airport. That would, imagine the spike in economy that would bring. So I mean, it's like a nuclear deterrence. It's almost like they because Georgia's government cut the tax breaks for Delta when they did that. So they spoke out against the new law. Something happened, and the governor said, "You know what? Those tax breaks that we gave you, we're taking those back."
Well, you don't bite the hand that feeds.
And then it's like a nuclear deterrence, because that shows Delta, like, if you want to leave, you can leave. We've tolerated you, but that's new business. And there's plenty of other, I mean, JetBlue, Virgin Galactic, all these smaller carriers that don't have a footprint in Georgia would be able to start new business.
One could argue that the reason Hartsfield-Jackson is so popular and successful is because of Delta, though. I mean, you have to understand that is a lot of flights going in and out. That's a lot of Georgia jobs. So I can understand both ends of the equation, right? Delta is a fixture of Georgia. They are part of Georgia's history. Like, they are...
Then act like it.
Right. They are responsible for a heck of a lot of growth.
I think the camera died.
That's okay. Our camera died over there on YouTube, so I think our battery died. Anyway, we are still running here on the podcast, though. But, yeah, it is... I can see both sides of the situation, but... these large companies, Coca-Cola, Delta, when we look at the situation in Georgia here, they have lobbyists. I mean, they have people they send in. Trust me, they have a voice somewhere. If there's an issue, they're heard.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the difficulty in this. So we're going to wrap up today's podcast. I think we've touched on quite a few things. Is there anything else you'd like to hit on that maybe we didn't get on?
I think for like that high-level overview, I think that was a great conversation just about wokeism and woke culture and cancel culture. I think we touched on pretty much everything.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in this week. And, we've been making a great effort to try to get these podcasts going. I know here a few weeks ago, we skipped a week. We will occasionally do that if we're in between podcast filming sessions and recording sessions. Sometimes we just have a lot going on between, Matt and the T-shirts, and then, Chad and I with the filming schedule. But we try to keep these coming out every week. So we post usually every Friday. The YouTube episodes will drop on Saturdays usually.
Yeah.
So if you see a YouTube episode pop through on a Saturday, just know that you could have tuned in on the podcast
on Friday
and gotten it on Friday, sometimes even earlier, y'all. If you check on Thursdays, sometimes those episodes will be there a day early. So if you want to catch the podcast early, make sure you listen in on the different streaming services and make sure you're downloading. Please go on there and give us a great rating. We would really appreciate that. It helps us show up in search results, helps the algorithm for us. So give that algorithm a push for us, if you will.
Absolutely, please.
Yep. Have a great week, y'all, and I really appreciate the support, and we will see you next week here on LLP. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Ink by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, danger is freedom. Have a good one.